Aidan Mahony, how are things by? How are you keeping?
I'm very good, Daniel.
Thanks a million for joining me here this evening, Aidan. Um, I just want to do a quick recap here at the very top, seeing if my stats are right here. You had 70 appearances for Kerry. You had 5 All-Irelands, 2 All-Stars, 3 leagues and 10 Munster titles. Did I leave
That's
anything
about
out?
it. No, I think that's it. Yeah. I was very, I suppose, fortunate career. When you look back on it like that, I think the biggest thing was probably the players I got to play with and the players I got to play against. Some of the greatest players ever to put on a jersey and to grace a football field. So, I think looking back on those things were a lot more important.
5 All-Irelands isn't bad, is it?
No, and I suppose we always talk about the ones we lose. And I was actually thinking about it there a few months ago when I started writing my own book. I think at times you need to lose a few to eventually win one, because I remember even 2003 when I came in first, won the Paddy and with Eddie Tackler. We lost Tyrone All-Ireland semi-final. I remember that kind of hurt that day. I suppose the other players that were playing, I wasn't, really getting game time back then. So you don't really feel part of it as such when you're only kind of in the door. But obviously I felt in 2005 and 2008. And, I think if you're ever going to win anything, those setbacks are actually a great learning curve as well.
What about the 2 All-Stars? What were you actually? I should know this, but what years were they in?
06 and 07. Look, for me, it's obviously it's a team game. When you get, I suppose, an individual accolade at the end of the year, it's nice. It's nice for your family to get, I suppose, a reward. But ultimately, you don't get a medal or you don't get anything without the group that's around you. And that's not 1 to 15; it's 1 to 24, and the backroom team. So. You might be picking up an all-star award yourself, but you're only collecting it on behalf of the team.
Yeah, I know it's a great honour. Though 2 All-Stars is a nice haul as well. Well, first of all, I just want to say I enjoyed the book. It's the book there. I see as well, which was something that was pointed out by Pat Kenny, was that the eye is initially drawn to the broken part, but it's only afterwards you see the un and the green.
It's in the Brazil colours.
In the Brazil colours. And did you have a say on the picture?
I did, yeah. I think at the start of it, when we got the heading or the title Unbroken, that was one of the pictures that was actually taken by Brendan Moran from Sports Files. Brendan's a good Kerry man, and he caught that picture in 2016 after the final whistle of the Dublin Kerry game. And I think it fitted the title of the book, and it fitted, I think, the overall story that goes through the book from start to finish.
You've been watching were you watching the semi-finals over the weekend?
I did. I watched both semi-finals. I did indeed.
What you make of the 2 games?
Yeah, look, I think if you look at both teams, the first game, it's like Stacks have a great system. They've a leader in Donaghy. I think when you've seen, I think the last 2 games, he's one of those guys, when he's inside, he's a threat. He knows when to go back and play as a sweeper. I think the younger lads around him feed off. I think St. Brendan's themselves the last night, I think for any game to come down to penalties, I think it's a desperate way to finish a game. There might be a bit of excitement for us watching on.
Yeah.
But I know 2 years ago we played Austin Stacks in the County League final. And I was looking at Donaghy go up the last night, taking the last penalty, and it was like deja vu. He was over in Rabbit in the County League final, Division 1, and he was stepping up against us, and he put the ball in the exact same corner. And I texted him after to remind him, but I think in the second game you look at Crokes and Rahilly's. Like Rahilly's have had a massive year, and a lot of people were writing Crokes off at the start of the year. And look, you write off Crokes at their pearl, because they're one of those teams, they always know how to win, and that game could have gone either way in the finish the last day. And I think in the second half, Stacks got a bit of momentum. Obviously, Shane Murphy going off was a big loss to Crokes as well, because he's a big player for him. And, it's going to be an intriguing final, an all-three final. And I'd say it'll be an interesting 2 weeks ahead.
I was inside at the penalties. I have to say it was exciting, all right, to see the penalties. The place was electric, but I would share your views on that. It might be, I don't know. I'm not sold as whether or not it's the best way to end games like that.
And I'm not being smart, and like we're talking about Kerry football, and
Yeah.
you know, we're all guessing about next year about who's going to be involved in the Kerry panel or what new players can we see. Do you know, nothing would be better than watching Stacks and St. Brendan's going at it again.
Yeah.
We'll say weekend or in 2 weeks. You know, I know obviously the Stacks has been delighted the game is finished now, but I just think penalties are the wrong way. And I know it's this case of look not getting out of the game, but you know, wouldn't it be amazing again to have Austin Stack Park full again?
Yeah.
You know, again, and looking forward to a replay. Just that's my opinion on it anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'd agree with you there. But I have the book here as well, Aidan, and I'm just going to run through just a few things that I marked up when I was reading it, the bits that I found interesting and stuff like that. But I'll just get your maybe memories or your thoughts on it very quickly. Yeah. There's one here, it's when you're a minor. I think this is from 1998. Anyway, it's on page 39, and essentially this is about getting G'd up inside in the dressing room with Charlie Nelligan and Mikey Sheehy. And you said in the dressing room though, Charlie started powering us up. Mikey Sheehy, a god of Kerry football, a gentleman, and someone who was to become a great friend of mine, was a selector and was walking around and talking to each player. Lads were getting togged, going through their individual rituals, whatever they were. And Charlie was hammering at home the jersey and what it meant and what we were about and who we were representing. And to be honest, the heart was nearly coming out of my chest by the time he was done. The door burst open and out we went. That was a good introduction there to that sort of stuff.
It was, and I think, look, for me, Daniel, it was more organic the way it kind of happened with the minors. I missed the Munster final due to breaking my nose. And then going up into an Ireland semi-final, you're kind of thinking that you're not going to come on or not going to get game time. And that kind of scene in the dressing room then was, like, I suppose now looking back, it was an amazing honour, like, to have, like, Charlie Nelligan and Mikey Sheehy, like, two of the greats of Kerry football inside in the dressing room, and they're trying to, you know, raise 24 fellas for battle. And I always laugh. I can remember after we were saying that Charlie had a paper in his hand and he was going through it saying that they were after kind of putting us down or they were after writing something about us. But I was looking after
the paper.
It could have been, I'd say, RSVP magazine. I'd say he was reading other that. There was nothing in it. But look, they were the kind of methods they had. And, you know, like we came away that day, we lost by a point. But just an amazing memory. And as I said, walking off that pitch, it just gave me a bit of appetite for wanting more. Came on as a sub for the last 10 or 15 minutes. As I said, look, it wasn't in my mind. Maybe I was better off because you're not as nervous. You're kind of taking in the whole scene of being inside in Croke Park, you know, as a first time as a player. And yeah, you get a run for 10 or 15 minutes and it was an amazing honour for me.
Charlie was saying to you, stay warm now, you're going to be coming on, and you thought he was only promoting you.
Yeah, and it was a different warm-up. Then, like, you were kind of standing around, and the warm-up back then was tying your laces and pulling up the socks and just coming onto the pitch. There was no activation or anything. And you know, it was the way it was. And I can remember going on that, and just the intensity and speed of the game was frightening. You know, it was something I'd never been used to. No matter what training you do in your life, it was just a different level. But as I said, it gave me, I suppose, an insight and a draw for something that I wanted more of.
And the asthma as well at that time, Aidan, it was far more of an issue when you were younger at minor level than it would become as you got older. I know it would always be an issue, but that's the impression I got anyway, was that at this stage it was...
Yeah. I suppose you don't have the professional advice you have nowadays or the medicines you have nowadays. I think back then, you know, everything was just, it was an inhaler, or if you were having an attack or if your asthma was bad, you used a nebulizer. And I was diagnosed when I was 8, and you know, I always found it a barrier for years. You know, there was no guidance or kind of coaching in what you do in sport when your chest gets wheezy or you're starting cold nights, when you're finding it hard to get your second wind or your second breath. And I use it more of an obstacle for myself or a hurdle to get over. But as the years went on, I think even 2004, I think Pat Flanagan got involved with us, and he had, I suppose, a lot of knowledge in asthma as well. And, you know, I suppose it's no different to nowadays where you talk to your coaches or your managers, and if you're not healthy in a night, you don't train. But back then, like, it was a case of coming out there and just getting out, doing laps upon laps. and you were just hanging on for dear life.
Here now to page 69, and it's around the time where you were going well with the club, and you see here on page 69. We had a game against Ballymackelligot that weekend, and Paddy said he'd be going to it just to watch me. Grand. Afterwards, I asked one of the Rathmore lads if he'd seen Paddy at the game. No sign of him. I spent the trip home wondering if that was a positive or negative. Did he have his mind made up to bring me in, or had he given up on me already? Then another phone call came from him. He mentioned that I was a man marker, that was what I did well. On the other side of the conversation, I was trying to get a message across. I'm picking up all the main players on the opposing teams all the time. Of course, he was getting another message entirely back to me. Hi, the main players are all inside here with me in Kerry training, and they're a different caliber. He spelt it out. He said if there was a graph, the lads at the Kerry were at the top and I was coming along, but I was still somewhere in the middle. I needed to add a bit more game. And then at the end of the call, he said, are you still playing that soccer? Another message. I am, I said. Well, it's one or the other now, he said.
That puts you back in your box fairly quick, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's some good memories there.
It is. And like it's memories of I suppose an amazing man, an amazing character, an amazing footballer. Like he was a role model for all of us. I know myself, he, outside of football, every Christmas he sent a letter home to my parents, and it was worth gold. That was the character of that man, and look, he gave me my first start. Like, as I said, that game, Ballymac, I didn't sleep the night before thinking Paddy O'Shea coming over to watch me. And then he doesn't turn up, but the phone rings that night, and it was just pure honesty. And I can remember the first week when I went in training. We were training the small pitch, and John O'Keefe was training us, and I thought there was 8 runs, and I wanted to lay down a marker. And the first 8 runs, you go up the hill and down the other side, and it was tough slogging now. And then the first 8, and I think I was up the front for about the first 5, and I found myself going back, and 8 finished, and I said, grand, into the football. Then we finished off with 8 more, and at that stage now, the head gasket was gone at that stage by me, and I found myself in the last one hanging on for dear life at the back, and they were coming down the hill, and I said to Paddy, I think my hamstring's gone there, Paddy. And he said, go in and tug off, and that was the Tuesday night. I came back on the Thursday night again, ready for training.
The hamstring was fine.
The hamstring was fine, and as he said himself, he said, I don't think it was a hamstring at all. He said, I think you blew the head gasket, and sure, all I could do was laugh, and he said no more. And as I said, like it was an amazing memory to have, and even that phone call, it was just, he had that kind of I suppose blackguarding side by him as well. Like, but look, he was very kind of well received by players as well.
I just want to quote this a little bit about Donny Buckley. He says Donny was one of the best coaches around and would bring my game to a whole new level when he got involved with Kerry in the years after. He was the best defensive coach I had during my career. Like it was obviously the whole package he brought, but do you remember anything specific about tips he would give you in the sense that things to keep in your mind when you're defending, stuff that worked for you, and maybe the way he might have phrased it or put it kind of sunk in very quickly and it made sense to you?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was the player you were marking, and we talk a lot about forwards that do these looping runs and they come off the shoulders, and any player you marked, like the great thing about Donny was he was able to analyse them from top to bottom, what leg they kicked off of, what runs they'd make, what players would pick them out usually, what space they would make in front of themselves, whether they stayed in the D or went long. And then it was their kicking leg and stuff. And for me at training, what I found from Donny was that he just broke it down. You start off with, working your feet, and then a lot of it was about contact about stopping your man first, where sometimes as a defender, you think you need to get to every ball before the forward, but you actually don't. There's always times where you need to think of the spatial awareness, and I'm always saying this to players now as well. There's always going to be times in games where you're going to be one-on-one with your man. It's that one time that you can dive in, that it's you're the only person between you and the goals. So, it was just all that thinking. And, as I said, look, it brought my game to a different level, and I probably enjoyed it more as well because I kind of made a transition from the half-back line into full-back. And, I love those duels inside there because, as I said, lots of times you spend your time one-on-one with your man inside there.
Was contact, was that one of his words, or one of his key words, something that he beat?
Contact was when you're going out with your man, even if he wins the ball, like he's either going to give it back to someone, but if he turns, you're making contact first to stop him. Like as I said, we're talking about football nowadays, and you're talking about systems, and you can see teams flood players back. And if you're a defender and you're a cornerback and you're with your man, like all you want to do is to stop him up. And the way you stop him up is by making contact, not by pulling him or dragging him. You make contact, but you stop him up, and then there's someone back to help you out. As I said, like you have teams now where they're playing 13 behind the ball, and I think it's for players. I think there's a massive element, and I know from my own career where, like, I love being a defender. I love being isolated and being one. And some days there was tough days, but that's how you learn. Like with mass defenses now and stuff. I think for a back, it's very hard, and I'd be kind of saying to myself, geez, do they not trust me that there's two more behind me? But look, I suppose football has evolved and has changed since my time playing at the county.
Gone on to page 133. This is just a little bit, but this is just Jack talking to you. In fairness to Jack, he thought it through and he spoke to me about it. You've spent a few evenings chasing Donegal Walsh, and that's the perfect preparation for Conor McCarthy. All we want is to stop him from getting the ball. Don't let him get the ball. I know we just kind of said that there a moment ago with Jack, but Jack was good with that one-to-one stuff, and he was very much a guy who wanted to pick a guy to do a job.
Yeah, and like he'd replicate in the weeks coming up to the game by actually putting you on a player that would be similar enough to what you'd be marking. And like we've seen down through the years, Donegal Walsh was probably the toughest draw you'd ever get inside in training, because from the first day he came in, he was one of those players that ran non-stop. He'd make 3 or 4 runs, and you'd be saying to yourself in training, he won't make a 5th run. And obviously, that Donegal being Donegal, he'd make that 5th run. He was one of the most insightful players I've ever played with. And he was amazing for us down through the years because, he brought every other player into it with his unselfish work. Yeah. And those few weeks leading up, I remember to the Cork game, I was delighted to see the back of him because he was a nightmare. But I remember against that game, then marking Conor McCarthy. And, I remember him even in the colleges that time. He was an amazing footballer. And as I said, he was one of those players that brought my game on to another different level because he was just one of those players that everything went through. He was very good at finding space. He was a linchpin for Cork. And for me, marking someone like him was obviously a great honour as well because, like, the manager's putting his faith in you, saying, look, you'll get out there, you'll pick up one of their best players. So that's a big boost to confidence as well. It was a good learning curve running after him for a few days in Páirc Uí Chaoimh.
And definitely no better man anyway to prepare you for Conor McCarthy. Anyways, Donegal Walsh. So I'm skipping here quickly, to page 171, and this is really when the news was breaking around the time that you had failed a drug test in inverted commas. We pulled in for a drink in Clem Smith's pub when we got to Limerick, and the 6 o'clock news came on the television on the big screen. Breaking sports news: a GAA player has failed a drugs test. Aidan Mahony of Kerry. The bar was packed because of the rugby game, and I could see people begin to turn around and nudge each other and point and say, "There he is, right there." That was a difficult moment.
He was, and like the kind of headline was the first GAA player ever to fail a drug test. When you're in a crowded house like that, it's not easy to kind of, I suppose, explain yourself, and you'll be kind of hoping the ground will open you up and swallow you up. I just think the way it was handled, even that day, the leaking of my name. I got a message that morning saying it was going to be leaked above in Dublin. And you'll be saying at times about when something like that happens, how do these things happen? And as I said, look, it doesn't kind of do anything to the format of the whole thing. The whole process took its format, and I was eventually cleared. But the way it kind of started out, people were asking me, why did you come out day one and speak? Then how do you come out and speak when, as I said, number one, it's breaking on the news, and then your name is being leaked. Yeah. What you say, because I remember even the media that time, the papers, O'Mahony fails drug test. There was no mention of an here or anything in the front pages. No. And people will make up their own minds. And as I said, over the diving incident as well. Yeah. The whole sympathy was in very short supply. It was kind of, for me as well, I was kind of saying to myself, look, you deserve this. And, that was the kind of mindset
again, I really did enjoy the book, Aidan. And did you ever think that, you'd be writing a book, go back to when you were 16 or 17 years of age, playing football in Rathmore, that you'd have, 5 All-Ireland medals, and that you'd have 2 All-Stars, and that you'd be the type of fella that would be, in a few years' time, someone says, you'll be writing a book and people will be reading it, and it'll be about all your life in Kerry football. I'm sure you would have said, we'll have to take your man into one of the padded rooms there in Killarney.
Absolutely, yeah. And no, because like the first chapter I spoke about there, I think my initial job fairy was being a farmer, Daniel, and that's what I wanted to be. I grew up on a farm. We've a sheep farm up in the mountains in Gilflesk, and I suppose that paved a lot of the way from my sporting journey. Those days up there, and everything was organic, and I was never one of those young people that wanted to play football or had any aspirations of playing football or playing with club or county. I started playing soccer with my older brother Anthony, and I was knocking great enjoyment out of that, and it just shows about sport when you enjoy something. I was playing a bit of badminton, and GA was far from my mind. And then, even when I finished it, the Dancing with the Stars chapter, it was like something that I couldn't see myself doing, or that I wouldn't see Aidan Mahony doing, and that was one of the reasons I did it. Obviously, with the support of my wife Denise as well, she gave me that extra push. But I think for young people, like when you start out, and I know myself, I've done a lot of talks, and I think it's easier to talk now because when you write a book and everything's being put out there, it's easier to go into young people. But I think, like what you said to start out, Dan, when you're addressing an inter-county player or any sports person, and you're talking about what they've won, and then when you have a young person sitting below in the audience and they're looking up saying, Jesus, I'll never get that, or I'll never get there. But when you actually tell the story then, and it's not about me writing the book, it's about when you tell that story of where you've came from, you actually give people hope. And I know myself, even reading back over it, if I was that person that had read something like this, and I'm not trying to promote the book now or anything, but if I had read that when I was younger, and I was starting out in sport and saying, like, I was getting 10 or 15 minutes in games when I was underage. Yeah. The asthma it crushed me. I found it very, very difficult. And I have no problem saying I could have walked away from sport very easily. But I persisted. I'd support. And you meet people in life then that push you on to new lengths and new levels. And they kind of guide you and say, right, the Kerry chapter finished. It's part of it. You've given everything for that jersey. You're happy with what you've done. You moved on. Like the dancing thing was another chapter. We've 2 beautiful girls on my son, Denise and Lucy and Lila. And, these things come along and you need to enjoy them. And I think just the learning curve in it is that every day is different, and your past is your past, and you just need to move on. And like when we spoke at that time in 2010, when I went through that, I couldn't leave my past go. And I can easily say that, where I couldn't move on from it. And I was like one of those people going to bed every night where I couldn't sleep because it was constantly in my head. And now, even when I wrote the book, reflecting back on it, you can actually tease it through and go through and say, yeah, that makes you the person you are now. As I said, it doesn't make you perfect or anything, but it makes you a bit more open and that more kind of life savvy that you can deal with these things.
And as well as all those things you listed, you've Aidan or AOM Fitness as well, which is obviously something that takes up a lot of your time.
Yeah, and I went back studying in 2015-16 because I knew the Kerry chapter was going to finish and I wanted something new. I'd found that fitness had become part of my life. It was something I loved. And, I knew myself, if I was going to set up a business, the first thing people ask are, what are your credentials or what are your qualifications? So I started studying a degree with Stanton College and found it very enjoyable. And then in 2017-18, I set up AOM Fitness. So it's an online fitness. We do Q&A every Thursday night on our Instagram page, AOM Fitness. And I love it. As I said, it's part of my life. And, it's part of who I am.
And before we go, I just 1 or 2 quick football questions for you. Do you have a prediction for the Saxon Rahilly's game?
Oh, Jesus, don't be asking me that.
Put you on the spot there, sorry.
Okay. I think it's very hard to call. I think the Rahleys again, the last they showed that they seem to be gaining form every game. They've really, in the second half, the last, if there was any other team you're playing the Crokes, you could be out the gate. But they held in there. Their big players came to the front at the finish of the game. But then you look at Stacks, and they're a young team. You know, there's a bit of steel about them. As I said, look, you've Kieran Downey at full forward, and he makes that team or that groom kind of tick any time they go on the pitch. So if you're asking me to call it, I won't. I'd find it very hard. I'm going to sit in the fence and be getting 4 goals to watch this.
I'm going to predict Rahleys by a nose. I don't know why, but I just am.
I both sides of both teams, so I can't say much. They might turn up for the Sigerson.
All right, okay. And for the year going forward, then Aidan, for Kerry, what would you like to see, and what do you expect to see?
Well, I think the biggest thing in it is, and I know this myself, in that anytime a new management group come in, for players that are starting, it's a case of looking over your shoulder. For players that were on panels and extended panels, it gives them an opportunity. And you'll see that in the county championship, where players that were on the panel with Kerry, they start playing above themselves because they're saying, right, now this is my opportunity. Jack has been there before, you know, and he'll freshen things up. He'll bring in new players. You know, the league will be probably used to see what they have. And I think what people are forgetting is that there was a kick of a ball last year between Kerry and Tyrone, 1 point. Now, that doesn't say you go on and win All-Ireland against Mayo, but there was one score in it. So I think it's going to be a very, you'd have to look forward to the year ahead. You know, as I said, new management team, they'll obviously be pressuring Jack as well, because, you know, in the county down here, you know, you're judging All-Irelands, and that's, as I said, it's not an arrogance. It's the way we were all kind of brought up. When you win in the Kerry jersey, you're judged on winning All-Ireland, so that pressure will be on as well. But I think, look, the players are there, they'll probably find 6 or 7 players through the county championships and the championships that's been playing at the moment, and you just look forward to, you know, unearthing a new Paddy Clifford, or like in 2014, a Paul Murphy, from someone that we've been seeing around the edges the last couple of years, the likes of Joe O'Connor and these guys, you know, that, or Stephen Openboer come back, you know, and you'll be hoping one of those will kick off and that there'll be a massive year ahead. But you'll be looking forward to the league, and you'll be looking forward to players getting jerseys. And it's like this, the old saying, they get a jersey, they play well, and they keep that jersey. So I think you'll be really looking forward to the year ahead.
Yeah, and it's not going to be too far away. It's Christmas before we know it. So I'd just like to say, Aidan, thanks a million for taking the time to speak to me. And I want to say congratulations with the book, and I want to say the very best of luck with the book and with everything else as well going forward, gentlemen.
Perfect, Alan. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks, Aidan.
More than much.